Stay quiet. A hand pressed against Graham Whitfield's mouth before he could breathe. The maid. The one he'd fired 2 weeks ago. Standing in his own darkened penthouse like she owned it. He grabbed her wrist.
Ted, listen.
From downstairs, his wife's voice.
The dose will be tripled by Friday. By Saturday morning, he is gone. No autopsy, just a rich old man dead in his sleep.
Laughter. A man's laughter. Then Vanessa's. Graham's hands began to tremble. 6 months of tremors. 6 months of fog. 6 months of his wife pouring his tea with a smile. Not aging. Poison. But what terrified Graham most wasn't the voice downstairs. It was the small black notebook the maid pulled from her pocket, and what was written inside would shatter everything he thought he knew. Yeah, that just took a dark turn real fast. Let's see what happens next. 4 years earlier. The first time Dolores Mitchell walked into the Whitfield penthouse, she carried everything she owned in one suitcase and the paper bag. The elevator opened to the 40th floor. Manhattan stretched below like a kingdom. Central Park in gold and green, the Hudson River catching morning light, and enough Italian marble underfoot to build a cathedral. 3 Monets on the west wall, a Steinway grand piano no one played, fresh orchids on every surface, replaced twice a week by a florist who charged more per visit than Dolores had earned in a month. Graham Whitfield built this world from nothing. Son of a plumber from Albany, dropped out of Syracuse at 19, started buying foreclosed row houses with borrowed money and a handshake. 40 years later, Whitfield Properties, commercial real estate across 11 states, $3.2 billion, Forbes list, corner table at Per Se. But money couldn't fix everything. Eleanor, his first wife, died 6 years ago, pancreatic cancer, fast and cruel. Graham held her hand in a hospital room that cost $4,000 a night and couldn't buy her one more sunrise. After Eleanor, the penthouse went quiet. His daughter Claire moved to Chicago, partly for work, partly because she couldn't stand watching her father disappear into silence. Graham ate alone, slept alone, walked through 40 rooms, and heard nothing but his own footsteps on stone. Then Vanessa arrived. Vanessa Holt, 35 when they met, former model, green eyes that could stop a conversation, and a laugh that made Graham feel 20 years younger. She appeared at a charity gala, touched his arm, and told him he looked like a man who'd forgotten how to smile. They married within 8 months. What Graham didn't see, what loneliness wouldn't let him see, was the calculation behind every touch. Vanessa Holt grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment in Newark, shared a bathroom with 3 siblings, watched her mother clean office buildings until her knees gave out. She swore she'd never scrub another person's floor. She just needed someone else to do it for her. That someone was Dolores Mitchell. The agency sent her. Quiet, reliable, no family complications, 54 years old. References from 3 previous households. Dolores arrived in a gray uniform, nodded politely, and began cleaning the master bathroom without being asked. Vanessa looked her up and down the way a person examines a stain. "You're the new one?" "Yes, ma'am." "The last girl couldn't keep the silver straight. I hope you're smarter than you look." "I'll do my best, ma'am." "Your best?" Vanessa exhaled through her nose. "We'll see." That was day 1. By week 2, Vanessa had stopped using Dolores's name entirely. It was you, or the maid, or, when guests were present, nothing at all. Just a snap of the fingers toward whatever needed cleaning. Dolores moved through the penthouse like weather, always present, never acknowledged. She polished the Monet's frames, pressed Graham's shirts with military precision, organized the pantry by expiration date without being told. She was perfect, and perfectly invisible. Graham barely registered her existence. A nod in the hallway, a mumbled "thank you" when she placed his tea on the desk. Once he almost said her name, but couldn't remember it. He called her "ma'am" instead, then felt embarrassed and said nothing at all. Dolores never corrected him, never complained. She simply moved from room to room, cloth in hand, eyes taking in everything. Because Dolores Mitchell was not what her uniform suggested. 28 years with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Financial Crimes and Witness Protection Division, recruited straight out of Howard University, top of her class, criminal justice, 1989. She'd tracked money launderers through Swiss banks, relocated 14 protected witnesses without a single compromise, and once talked a man out of a hostage situation in a Tulsa parking garage using nothing but her voice and 45 minutes of patience. Her husband, Raymond Mitchell, was Bureau 2, counterintelligence. They met at Quantico, married at the courthouse, and spent 31 years building a life between case files and kitchen tables. Raymond died 3 years ago, prostate cancer. Slow and quiet, like the man himself. After the funeral, Dolores packed her badge in a shoebox, sold the house in Silver Spring, and moved to a studio apartment in Harlem. She needed work. Not money, her pension covered enough. She needed a reason to get out of bed. Cleaning houses gave her that. She didn't expect to find a murder in progress, but the signs were already there. In the tea, in the tremors. Vanessa smiled every time Graham raised his cup. Dolores noticed. She always noticed. That was the problem, and the reason Vanessa would come to regret ever letting her through the door. It started with tea. Every afternoon at 3:15, Vanessa carried a porcelain cup to Graham's study. Oolong, loose leaf, brewed in a hand-painted Japanese teapot she'd bought on their honeymoon in Kyoto. She poured it slowly, kissed his forehead, and whispered, "For my love." Graham would smile, sip, and within 30 minutes his hands would begin to shake. Dolores noticed the pattern on a Tuesday in October. She was folding towels outside the study when she heard the cup rattle against the saucer. Then Graham's voice, thin, confused. "Vanessa, I can't hold the pen." "You're tired, darling. Drink your tea. Rest." The door closed. Dolores stood still, a towel pressed to her chest. Something cold moved through her. Not suspicion yet. Not quite. Just a feeling. The kind that had kept her alive in rooms far more dangerous than this one. She began watching. 3:15. Every day. The teapot. The cup. The tremors 30 minutes later. By November, Graham was dropping things. His fork at dinner, his phone on the marble floor, twice in 1 week. His signature on contracts had turned into a jagged line, barely readable. The company board sent concerned emails. Graham blamed stress. Vanessa blamed his age. "He's 62, she told Bradley Stokes over lunch while Dolores served bread rolls. "Men fall apart. It's what they do." Bradley, 45, square jaw, expensive watch, the kind of lawyer who smiled with his mouth but never his eyes, nodded slowly. "And the will? Has he signed the revision?" "Last week. He could barely hold the pen, but he signed." Dolores set down the bread basket. Neither of them looked at her. They never did. That night, Dolores opened her notebook, black leather, small enough to fit in an apron pocket. On the first page, she wrote, October 14th, tremors in both hands. Onset approximately 30 minutes after tea. Duration 2+ hours. Subject unaware. She wrote it the way she'd written 10,000 field reports. Date, time, observation, evidence. Old habits don't die. They wait. By December, the notebook had 46 entries. Graham's symptoms were accelerating. Memory lapses, weight loss, muscle weakness, tingling in his feet. He saw a neurologist. The neurologist found nothing conclusive. Vanessa sat beside him at every appointment, holding his hand, dabbing her eyes. "I'm so scared," she told the doctor. "I can't lose him." Dolores stood in the hallway, holding Graham's coat. She could see Vanessa's face through the glass partition. The tears dried the moment the doctor looked away. January. The dinner party. Graham hosted 12 business partners in the formal dining room. Dolores served. White gloves, silver trays, moving between chairs like a shadow. Vanessa sat at the head of the table, Graham's seat, but he'd stopped protesting months ago. She laughed. She sparkled. She held the room the way a diamond holds light. Then Dolores reached across to pour water, and her sleeve brushed Vanessa's arm. Everything stopped. Vanessa looked down at her arm, then up at Dolores. The smile didn't change, but the eyes went flat. "Did you just touch me?" "I'm sorry, ma'am. I was pouring—" "I didn't ask what you were doing." Vanessa lifted her napkin and wiped her arm, slowly, deliberately, where Dolores's sleeve had made contact. She wiped it the way someone wipes off something foul. The table went silent. 12 faces. Not one spoke. "Get a new uniform. Something with shorter sleeves, so you keep your skin to yourself." She turned back to her guests. "I apologize. You'd think after 4 years, she'd know not to touch people." A guest chuckled, then another. Graham stared at his plate. His hands trembled around his fork. He said nothing. Dolores stepped back. "Yes, ma'am." She walked to the kitchen, set down the water pitcher, stood very still for 11 seconds. She counted, the way Raymond taught her. 11 seconds. That's all you need. Breathe in for 4, hold for 3, out for 4, then decide. She decided. She went back out and finished serving dinner. But that night, she added a new section to her notebook. Not symptoms this time. A name. Bradley Stokes. Attorney. Frequent private meetings with Mrs. Whitfield. Body language. Intimate. Financial discussions observed twice in the past month. 2 weeks later, the second humiliation. Dolores was cleaning the upstairs hallway when she heard Vanessa's voice through the bedroom door. Phone call. Speaker on. Bradley's voice. "Increase the dose. He's still too alert. He asked questions about the offshore account yesterday." Vanessa. "How much?" "Double it. 2 more months and we won't need to pretend anymore." Dolores's hand stopped on the doorframe. Her body went rigid. 28 years of training collapsed into a single thought. Thallium. Colorless, odorless, mimics neurological decline. The perfect slow poison for a man whose age would explain every symptom. She knew because she'd worked a case in 2009, the Henderson case. A wife in Connecticut. Same method, same patients, same teapot. She stepped back from the door. One floorboard creaked. The bedroom door flew open. Vanessa stood there, phone gone, arms crossed. "Were you listening?" "No, ma'am. I was cleaning the—" "I didn't ask." Vanessa stepped closer, close enough that Dolores could smell the Chanel. "Let me make something very clear to you. You are a maid. You clean toilets. You take out garbage. That is what people like you do. That is all people like you will ever do. You don't listen at doors. You don't ask questions. You don't think. Are we clear? Yes, ma'am. Now get out of my sight. You make my skin crawl. Dolores walked away, slow, steady, back straight. That night, entry number 53, phone conversation overheard. B. Stokes instructed V. Whitfield to increase dosage. Subject referenced offshore account and 2 more months. Consistent with thallium sulfate poisoning protocol. Cross-reference, Henderson case, 2009, Hartford, CT. Identical M.O. The third humiliation came fast. Dolores tried. She waited until Vanessa was out. She approached Graham in his study, where he sat staring at a contract he could no longer read. Mr. Whitfield, I need to speak with you. About your health. Graham looked up. His eyes were clouded. My health? I believe something is... The door opened. Vanessa, standing there like she'd been waiting. What is she doing here? She wanted to talk about she's overstepping. Again. Vanessa pulled out her phone. I'm calling the agency. She's done. Vanessa, she just... Graham, sign the termination letter. Now. He signed. His hand shook so badly the pen slipped twice. He didn't read what he signed. He couldn't. Vanessa held the door open. Dolores picked up her coat, her bag, and the black notebook. At the threshold, she paused, looked back at Vanessa. You should be more careful with that teapot, Mrs. Whitfield. Some things leave traces. Vanessa's smile cracked. Just for a second. Then the door closed. Nah, because this part literally broke me. She had the receipts. She had the skills. She had everything. And they still threw her out like trash because she's black and holds a mop. Like, are you serious right now? I can't. I actually can't. Dolores Mitchell walked out of that penthouse with nothing but a suitcase, a paper bag, and a notebook full of evidence no one had asked for. But she wasn't walking away. She was just getting started. The studio apartment in Harlem was smaller than Vanessa's closet. 1 room, 1 window, a radiator that clanked like a tired heartbeat every 20 minutes. Dolores sat at the kitchen table, the only table, with the black notebook open in front of her and a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. 53 entries, 4 months of observations, dates, times, symptoms, dosage patterns, overheard conversations, photographs she'd taken with a prepaid phone, the tea tin, the unlabeled vial tucked behind Vanessa's jewelry box, the revised will with Graham's trembling signature. Laid out on a kitchen table in Harlem, it looked exactly like what it was, a case file. Dolores stared at it for a long time. The clock on the microwave read 11:43 p.m. Outside, a siren wailed down Lenox Avenue and faded into nothing. She could walk away. She'd been fired, humiliated, told she was nothing, told her skin made people crawl. She owed Graham Whitfield nothing. The man couldn't even remember her name. She opened the drawer beside the sink. Inside, beneath a folded dishcloth, sat a small wooden box. She lifted the lid. FBI Special Agent Badge. Number 3914. Dolores A. Mitchell, issued 1989, retired 2021. Beside it, her Quantico graduation photo. 23 years old, sharp suit, sharper eyes, standing in a row of 19 agents, one of only 3 women, the only black face in the frame. She picked up the badge, ran her thumb across the engraving. It was cold. It was familiar. It felt like Raymond. Raymond would have already made the call. She picked up the phone. 3 rings. A voice. Groggy, irritated, unmistakably federal. This better be good. It's midnight. Carolyn, it's Dolores. Silence. Then a long exhale. Agent Carolyn Davis, 55, still active, Quantico class of 91, 2 years behind Dolores. They'd shared a desk for 6 years, a safe house in Baltimore for 3 weeks during the Moreno case, and a bond that 15 years of distance hadn't broken. Dolores Mitchell, you disappeared off the face of the earth. I heard you were cleaning houses. Yes. You're serious. I need your help, Carolyn. I think someone's being poisoned. Another silence. Longer this time. Dolores, you retired. You're a housekeeper now. You can't just... The Henderson case, Hartford, 2009. Carolyn stopped talking. Wife poisoned husband with thallium sulfate in his evening tea. Slow dosage over 5 months. Symptoms mimicked early onset dementia. The neurologist missed it. The internist missed it. Everyone missed it. Dolores paused. Except me. I remember. It's happening again. Same method, same patients, same teapot. Dolores heard Carolyn sit up in bed, the creak of a mattress spring, a lamp clicking on. Tell me everything, Dolores told her. 45 minutes, no pauses, every entry from the notebook recited from memory, because Dolores Mitchell had never needed notes to remember. The notes were for courts, the tea schedule, the symptom timeline, the vial with no label, Bradley Stokes and the offshore account, the doubled dosage, the revised will, Vanessa wiping her arm where Dolores had touched her, like contact with black skin was contamination. Carolyn listened without interrupting. When Dolores finished, the line was quiet for 10 seconds. You took samples? 3, sealed in evidence bags, stored in my refrigerator. You still carry evidence bags? I still carry everything. Another pause. Then Carolyn's voice changed. No longer the old friend, the agent. Send me the samples through the Bureau lab courier. I'll open a file. Preliminary. Quiet. But, Dolores, I need direct evidence. Conversations. Admissions. Something a prosecutor can hold up in court. I know. How do you plan to get it? Dolores looked at the notebook, then at the badge, then at the single key sitting on the corner of the table. Brass, unreturned, still cut for the service entrance of the Whitfield penthouse. She forgot to take back my key. Carolyn exhaled. You're going back in. Thursday. Graham's supposed to return Friday, but he won't make it that long. I've seen his decline rate. The tremors have moved to his legs. He'll cut the trip short. How can you possibly know that? Because I know what thallium does at this stage. His body is shutting down. He can barely stand. He'll come home early. And if Vanessa finds you? Dolores picked up the badge, held it under the kitchen light. The metal caught the reflection of the Harlem street lamp outside, orange glow on federal steel. Then I'll be exactly where she expects me, on my knees, with a cloth in my hand. The difference is, this time, she'd also have a wire. Thursday, 2/14, p.m. Dolores Mitchell stood at the service entrance of the Whitfield penthouse, wearing the same gray uniform she'd worn for 4 years. Same flat shoes, same apron, same invisible woman. The only difference was the wire taped beneath her collar and the FBI frequency transmitting to a surveillance van parked 6 blocks south on Madison Avenue. The brass key slid into the lock, turned without resistance. The door opened to the back hallway. Utility closet, laundry room, staff kitchen. She knew every inch, every creak in the floorboard, every blind spot in the security cameras that Vanessa never bothered to check, because who watches the maid? The penthouse was empty. Vanessa, spa appointment, back by 5. Staff, sent home early. Bradley, at his office downtown, due at 7 for a private dinner. Dolores had 2 hours and 46 minutes. She moved the way she'd moved through safe houses in Baltimore and evidence rooms in Quantico. Heel first, weight distributed, breathing through her nose. No perfume, no lotion, nothing that leaves a scent. First stop, master bedroom. Vanessa's vanity, white lacquer, mirror ringed with bolds, enough cosmetics to stock a department counter. Dolores pulled open the 3rd drawer, jewelry box. Beneath the velvet lining, the vial. Still there. No label, amber liquid. She photographed the lot number etched into the glass, then returned it exactly as she'd found it, rotated 15 degrees left, cap facing the mirror. She'd memorized its position weeks ago. Second stop, Bradley's study. The room Vanessa gave him on the 2nd floor. For legal work, she'd told Graham. Dolores had cleaned this room 100 times. She knew the locked drawer, bottom right. She pulled a tension wrench from her apron pocket. Standard bureau pick, the kind they taught at Quantico in week 6. The drawer opened in 14 seconds. Inside, documents. She photographed each one. The revised will, Graham's signature shaking across the page like a seismograph reading. A power of attorney naming Vanessa as sole executor. And beneath everything, a manila envelope. 2 first-class tickets, New York to Zurich, departing Saturday, one way, no return flights. They weren't planning to come back. Dolores's jaw tightened. She photographed the tickets, closed the drawer, reset the lock, sent everything encrypted to Carolyn through a secure channel. Her phone buzzed. Carolyn. Lab results back. Samples confirmed. Thallium sulfate. Concentration increasing over time. Consistent with escalating dosage. We have enough for a warrant. Dolores read it twice, then deleted the message. Third stop, the dining room. The long, mahogany table where she'd served 100 meals and swallowed 1,000 insults. She ran her fingers along the underside of the table's edge, found the spot where the wood met the support beam. She pressed the recording device into place. Small, flat, skin-colored. Battery life? 72 hours. If Vanessa and Bradley discussed anything at this table tomorrow night, every word would be captured. Dolores checked the time. 3:58 p.m. 62 minutes left. She allowed herself one moment. Standing in the center of the dining room, she looked around. The chandelier, the marble, the orchids, the painting of a countryside she'd dusted 3 times a week for 4 years. She'd scrubbed red wine off this floor on her knees while 12 people laughed. She'd been called filth in this room, been told her skin made people sick, been fired for trying to save the man who paid her $9.50 an hour. Her hands were steady. Not a tremor, not a shake. Funny, she thought. The man with $3 billion can't hold a teacup, and the woman with nothing can't be moved. She turned and walked toward the laundry room. That's when the elevator chimed. Dolores froze. 4:01 p.m. Vanessa wasn't due until 5. The staff was gone. Nobody should be here. Heels on marble, fast, clicking like a metronome counting down. Dolores slipped into the laundry room and pressed her back against the wall beside the dryer. The door was open 3 inches, enough to see the hallway, enough to hear. Vanessa walked past, phone pressed to her ear, laughing. Everything's set for tomorrow night. I gave the staff Friday off. Told Graham I'm cooking dinner myself. Romantic. Candlelight. His favorite wine. A pause. Bradley's voice, tinny through the speaker. And the dosage? Triple. Mixed into the wine this time, not the tea. Faster absorption. By midnight, his heart gives out. Saturday morning, I call the paramedics in tears. Another pause. And the maid? She was asking questions before you let her go. Vanessa laughed. The same laugh Dolores had heard 1,000 times. Bright, musical, empty. The maid? Please. She's probably scrubbing some other toilet right now. That woman couldn't investigate her way out of a paper bag. She's black, Bradley. She cleans things. That's all she'll ever do. Their laughter mixed together and echoed down the marble hallway. Dolores didn't move, didn't breathe. Her back was against the dryer, and she could feel the machine's residual warmth through her uniform. Her hands did not shake. Her pulse held at 62 beats per minute. She counted the way Raymond taught her. When the world gets loud, you get quiet. When they panic, you count. She counted, and the wire beneath her collar recorded every word. Vanessa's heels clicked away toward the master bedroom. A door closed. Music started. Something French. Something expensive. Dolores exhaled, pulled out her phone. One message to Carolyn. Tomorrow night. Triple dose in the wine. They're planning cardiac arrest by midnight. I have it on tape. Move the timeline up. Carolyn's response came in 9 seconds. Teams mobilizing. ETA tomorrow 9 p.m. Can you stay inside until then? Dolores looked at the laundry room, the ironing board, the starch cans, the basket of Graham's shirts she used to press every morning. I've been inside for 4 years. One more night won't kill me. She paused, then added, but it might kill him if we're late. She tucked the phone away, pulled a clean cloth from the shelf, and began folding towels. If Vanessa walked in right now, she'd see exactly what she expected. The maid, doing what maids do. She'd never see the wire, the badge in the apron pocket, the 28 years behind those quiet hands. And by tomorrow night, she wouldn't need to, because tomorrow night, those hands would end her. Not with violence, with evidence. Thursday, 9:47 p.m. The elevator chimed again. But this time, the footsteps were different. Heavy, uneven. The sound of a man whose legs had forgotten how to carry him. Graham Whitfield dragged his suitcase across the marble foyer like it weighed 100 pounds. It didn't. He did. 6 months of thallium had turned a man who once closed billion-dollar deals with a handshake into someone who needed 3 attempts to press the right elevator button. He wasn't supposed to be here until Friday. But on the flight home, his left hand had seized, locked into a claw around the armrest while his pilot pretended not to notice. His vision blurred over Connecticut. By the time the jet touched down at Teterboro, Graham Whitfield couldn't sign his own name. He knew something was wrong. He just didn't know it was his wife. The penthouse was dark. Vanessa was asleep upstairs. The French music had stopped an hour ago. The hallway stretched ahead of him, lit only by the Manhattan skyline, bleeding through floor-to-ceiling glass. Then a hand touched his shoulder. Graham spun, or tried to. His body moved like it was underwater. Dolores stood in front of him. Gray uniform, white cloth folded over her arm. The same woman he'd watched scrub his floors for 4 years without once asking her last name. But her eyes were different. He'd never looked closely enough to notice before, but now, in the dark, 6 inches from his face, those eyes were not the eyes of a maid. They were steady, locked. The kind of eyes that had seen things no cleaning cloth could wipe away. Stay quiet. Your life depends on it. Dolores? I fired you. What are you? Your wife fired me. And right now, she's sleeping 10 feet above the woman she's planning to murder you with.
Graham's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Listen to me carefully, Mr. Whitfield. You have been poisoned. Thallium sulfate. In your tea. Every afternoon for 6 months. The tremors, the memory loss, the weakness in your legs. It's not aging. It's not stressful. Your wife has been killing you 1 cup at a time. Graham shook his head, slow, like a man trying to wake from something. No. Vanessa wouldn't.
Tomorrow night she will triple the dose in your wine. By midnight, your heart stops. Saturday morning, she calls the paramedics, cries for the cameras, and flies to Zurich with your lawyer and your money. You're insane. You're a maid. I need you to sit down. She guided him to the study, locked the door, turned on the desk lamp, low, amber, enough to read by. Graham collapsed into the leather chair. His hands trembled against the armrests. Dolores reached into her apron pocket and placed 2 things on the desk, the black notebook and a badge. FBI. Special Agent. Dolores A. Mitchell. 28 years of service. Graham stared at the badge the way a man stares at a loaded gun pointed in the wrong direction. Then at Dolores, then back at the badge. You're Federal Bureau of Investigation, Financial Crimes and Witness Protection. Retired. But tonight, I'm not retired. She opened the notebook. Page 1, October 14th. The first entry. Read. Graham read. His hands shook so violently the pages rattled. Dolores held the notebook steady for him, the way she used to hold his teacup when his fingers couldn't grip the handle. He'd never thought about why she was always there at the right moment. Now he knew. Page after page, dates, dosages, symptoms mapped against tea times, photographs of the vial, transcripts of overheard conversations, Bradley's name circled in red, the Zurich tickets, the forged will. 127 pages, 4 months, every detail cataloged with the precision of a woman who had spent 3 decades building cases that put people in prison. By page 60, Graham was crying. By page 100, he wasn't making any sound at all. He closed the notebook, placed both palms flat on the desk, pressing down, trying to stop the shaking. It didn't work. It hadn't worked for months. "You were watching over me," he whispered. "This whole time?" "Yes, sir." "Why?" "I didn't even know your name. I let her treat you like—" "That's not why I stayed, Mr. Whitfield." "Then why?" Dolores picked up the badge, held it the way a soldier holds a flag, not with pride, but with duty. "Because 28 years ago, I swore an oath to protect people who can't protect themselves. I never said it had an expiration date. Graham looked at her, the maid, the agent, the woman his wife had called filth. And for the first time in 4 years, he saw her. Graham's first instinct was rage. He stood up, or tried to. His legs buckled. He caught the edge of the desk, knuckles white, arms shaking. I'm going down there, right now. I'll drag her out of that bed and she destroys everything. Dolores didn't raise her voice. She never raised her voice. The vial goes down the drain in 4 seconds. The teapot gets rinsed in 6. Bradley gets a phone call in 10. By the time you finish your sentence, every piece of evidence disappears, and you're a confused old man yelling at his wife in the middle of the night. Graham stopped.
Carolyn's team is 15 minutes out. FBI, 6 agents. They've been building the case since Monday. But they need Vanessa and Bradley in the same room, on the record, discussing the dosage. That recording happens tomorrow night, unless we force it tonight. 15 minutes, Graham's voice cracked. She could kill me 15 times in 15 minutes. She won't, because she doesn't know you're here, and she doesn't know I'm here. Right now, we're the only advantage you have, Mr. Whitfield. Your silence is your weapon. Use it. Graham sank back into the chair. His breathing was ragged, shallow. The thallium had been eating his nervous system for 6 months, and his body was running on whatever was left. What do I do? You stay in this room. You don't move. You don't make a sound. I go downstairs. Downstairs? To Vanessa? She thinks I'm gone, fired, forgotten. If she sees me, she sees what she's always seen. The maid, the help, the black woman who scrubs things. Dolores straightened her apron. That's my cover. It always has been. She turned toward the door. Dolores, she stopped. Be careful. She looked back. The faintest movement at the corner of her mouth. Not quite a smile. I've been careful for 4 years, Mr. Whitfield. Tonight, I just need to be careful for 15 more minutes. She walked out and closed the door behind her. The staircase curved down to the main floor in a wide marble spiral. Dolores descended without sound, each step placed on the outer edge where the stone was thickest and the echo was smallest. A technique she'd learned not at Quantico, but in a crack house in East Baltimore in 1996, moving through darkness toward a man with a shotgun and a hostage. The penthouse below was lit by a single lamp in the living room. The dining table stretched out in the dim light. Mahogany, 12 chairs, the chandelier hanging above it like a crystal guillotine. Beneath the table's edge, her recording device waited. Then she heard the elevator. Not from above, from the lobby. Bradley Stokes stepped out. Overcoat, leather briefcase. The smell of bourbon and expensive cologne arrived before he did. Dolores pressed herself against the hallway wall. She hadn't expected him tonight. He was supposed to come tomorrow. The timeline was wrong. Bradley walked past her, 3 feet away, and turned into the living room. He set his briefcase on the table and pulled out his phone. Vanessa, I'm downstairs. Change of plans. We do it tonight. Vanessa's voice came through the speaker, sleepy, irritated. Tonight? He's not even here until tomorrow. His pilot called. Graham left early. His plane landed 2 hours ago. He could walk in any minute. Silence. Then the sound of sheets moving, feet on the floor. Get the wine ready. I'm coming down. Dolores's pulse spiked for exactly 2 seconds. Then it settled. When the world gets loud, you get quiet. She counted. 62 beats. 62.
She needed to stay in this penthouse. She needed them talking at that table. She needed the recording device to capture everything. And she needed 15 minutes for Carolyn's team to arrive. But now Bradley was between her and the service exit, and Vanessa was coming downstairs. She was trapped. Dolores did the only thing that made sense. She stepped out of the shadows, picked up a cloth from the kitchen counter, and started wiping the marble island. Bradley saw her first. What the hell? He stopped mid-sentence, stared. The maid, gray uniform, cloth in hand, standing in the kitchen like she'd never left. You were fired. I left my scarf in the laundry room, sir. The agency told me to come collect my things. At 10 o'clock at night? I work when I'm told to work, sir. Bradley's eyes narrowed. He studied her the way a predator studies movement, not the animal, just the threat level. Dolores kept wiping, slow circles, eyes down. Then Vanessa appeared at the bottom of the stairs, silk robe, hair loose. She saw Dolores and froze. Why is she here? Says she forgot something, Bradley muttered. Vanessa walked toward Dolores, each step deliberate. She stopped 2 feet away, close enough that Dolores could see the vein pulsing in her neck. I told you to never come back. I'm just collecting my things, ma'am. I'll be gone in 2 minutes. You'll be gone now. Vanessa pointed toward the service door. Get out, before I call the police and tell them my former maid broke in. Dolores set down the cloth. Yes, ma'am. She took 1 step toward the door. Bradley blocked it. He wasn't looking at her face. He was looking at her collar. Something had caught the light, a reflection. Tiny, metallic. The wire. Wait. Bradley's voice dropped. He stepped closer. What is that? Dolores's hand moved to her collar, casual, adjusting. My pin, sir. From my church. That's not a pin. Bradley reached for her collar. His fingers were 2 inches away. This was the moment. 15 years ago, Dolores would have broken his wrist in 3 places. 10 years ago, she would have drawn her weapon. But she wasn't that agent anymore. She was a 58-year-old woman in a maid's uniform, and the only weapon she had was time. She needed 4 more minutes. Sir, please don't touch me. Take off the apron. Sir, take it off. Now. Vanessa stepped closer. Bradley, what are you? She's wearing a wire. His voice was ice. She's been recording us. Vanessa's face changed. The mask, the beauty, the charm, the smile that had seduced a billionaire, cracked down the middle like dropped porcelain. You. Vanessa's voice came out in a hiss. You worthless, scheming little. I knew it. I knew you were more than just some stupid. The elevator chimed. Everyone stopped. The doors opened. Agent Carolyn Davis stepped into the foyer. Navy blue windbreaker, FBI printed across the chest in yellow block letters. Behind her, 6 agents in tactical vests, moving in formation, covering every exit. FBI. Nobody moves. Vanessa's wine glass slipped from her fingers. It fell in slow motion. Or maybe that's just how Dolores remembered it later. Red wine hit white marble and spread like a wound. The same marble Dolores had scrubbed on her knees while 12 people watched and laughed. The same stain, the same floor. Different ending. Bradley ran 3 steps toward the service exit before an agent caught his shoulder and pressed him face first into the Italian marble he used to walk across in handmade loafers. Handcuffs clicked. Cold steel on warm wrists. Carolyn crossed the room to the dining table. Gloved hand. Evidence bag. She lifted the crystal decanter of wine that Vanessa had prepared. The wine meant for tonight. The wine meant to stop Graham Whitfield's heart before sunrise.
Bag it. Bag everything. The teapot, the vials, every document in that briefcase.
Vanessa stood motionless. Her silk robe trembled. Her mouth opened and closed without sound. A woman who had always had the perfect words suddenly finding none. Then footsteps on the staircase. Slow, uneven. The sound of a man fighting his own body for every step. Graham Whitfield descended the marble spiral. He gripped the railing with both hands. His legs shook. His face was gray. But he was standing.
He reached the bottom step and looked at Vanessa. 3 years of marriage. 1,000 poured cups of tea. 100 whispered I love yous over a pillow soaked in lies. 3 years. His voice was barely audible. I gave you 3 years of my life, and you were counting down the days until my last one. Vanessa's composure broke. Tears, real ones, maybe the first real ones she'd ever cried in this penthouse. Graham, please, I can explain. It's not what it...
No. Graham steadied himself on the railing. You can explain to a judge. Carolyn nodded to 2 agents. They stepped forward. Vanessa's wrists, the same wrists that had wiped away Dolores's touch like it was contamination, disappeared into handcuffs. The click of the metal echoed through 40 rooms of marble and glass. Dolores stood by the window. Manhattan glittered below. 10 million lights, 10 million lives, none of them aware of what had just happened on the 40th floor. Her hands were steady. They had always been steady. The woman they called the Help had just saved the most powerful man in the room, and she hadn't raised her voice once. The penthouse went quiet. Not the kind of quiet that had filled these rooms for months. The silence of secrets, of slow poison, of a woman smiling while she measured death into a teacup. This was different. This was the silence after a storm passes, and you realize you're still breathing. FBI agents moved through the rooms with gloved hands and evidence bags. The teapot, hand-painted porcelain from Kyoto, the one Vanessa had carried to Graham's study every afternoon at 3:15, was sealed in plastic. The vials from behind the jewelry box, the forged will, Bradley's briefcase, the Zurich tickets. Every piece of a 3-year murder plot, disassembled and catalogued in under 40 minutes. Graham sat on the sofa. The same sofa where Vanessa used to curl beside him, stroking his hair, whispering that everything would be fine. A paramedic knelt in front of him, checking his vitals, blood pressure, pupil response, tremor frequency. How long? Graham asked. The paramedic hesitated. Tell me. Based on the concentration levels in the preliminary samples, if you'd continued ingesting at this rate, you had approximately 13 days. 13 days. Less than 2 weeks. He would have died in this penthouse, in this chair, with a cup of poisoned tea in his trembling hands. And the death certificate would have read, cardiac arrest. Natural causes. No autopsy. Nobody would have questioned it. A 62-year-old billionaire. Stress. Overwork. Age. Nobody, except the woman standing by the window. Dolores hadn't moved. She watched the paramedic work, arms folded, face unreadable. Carolyn stood beside her, speaking into a phone, coordinating transport, filing warrants, briefing the U.S. Attorney's Office. Graham looked across the room at Dolores. 20 feet of Italian marble between them. The same distance she'd crossed 1,000 times carrying his tea, his laundry, his dry cleaning. The same distance she'd been told to keep, because that was the proper distance between a billionaire and the Help. He stood. The paramedic tried to stop him. He waved her off. He crossed the room, slow, each step a fight against his own failing body. He stopped in front of Dolores. His hand, still trembling, reached out and took hers. "Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't even see myself." Dolores looked at his hand around hers. The first time in 4 years he'd touched her, not to hand her a plate, not to pass her a set of keys, just to hold on. "You're welcome, Mr. Whitfield." The trial lasted 11 days. Center Street Courthouse. Standing room only. CNN, NBC, Fox, Reuters. Cameras lined the back wall like a firing squad. Sketch artists filled pads with Vanessa's face, trying to capture the exact moment her mask crumbled for good. The prosecution was surgical. T samples, thallium sulfate, concentration escalating over 6 months. The vial from behind Vanessa's jewelry box, her fingerprints only. Bradley's briefcase, forged will, power of attorney, 2 one-way tickets to Zurich. And the wire recording, Vanessa's voice, clear as glass. Triple the dose Friday. By Saturday morning, he's gone. The defense tried everything. Illegal entry, evidence obtained without a warrant, inadmissible recording. The judge shut it down. Carolyn Davis had opened the federal file 4 days before the arrest. The warrant was signed before Dolores set foot in the penthouse Thursday. Every piece of evidence collected under federal authority by the book. Because the book was something Dolores had helped write. She took the stand on day 7. Gray suit, hair pulled back, hands folded, steady. The defense attorney lunged. "You're a retired agent working as a housekeeper. Why should this jury trust your observations over a licensed physician?" Dolores didn't blink. "Because the physician saw Mr. Whitfield for 30 minutes every 6 weeks. I saw him every day. I made his bed. I watched his hands shake a little more each morning. A doctor looks for disease. I was trained to look for intent. Silence. The kind that fills a room when the truth lands and nobody can move." The jury deliberated 4 hours. Vanessa Holt? Guilty. Attempted murder in the 1st degree. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Elder abuse. 25 years, no parole. Bradley Stokes? Guilty. Accessory to attempted murder. Fraud. Disbarred. 18 years. Vanessa didn't cry when the verdict dropped. She stared straight ahead. The same blank, beautiful stare she'd used to charm a billionaire and pour poison into his teacup for 6 months. It didn't work on 12 jurors. Bradley's handmade loafers shuffled across courtroom tile as marshals led him away. The same shoes that once clicked across Graham's marble. Different floor now. Graham watched from the 2nd row. His hands still trembled. Doctors said some nerve damage was permanent. Thallium had stolen something no money could buy back. But he was alive. 13 days from death, and he was breathing, watching justice land exactly where it belonged. 3 months later, Whitfield Properties headquarters, 200 reporters, 6 countries. Graham stood at the podium, thinner, older, a tremor in his left hand that would never fully stop, but his voice was clear. "I'm alive because of one woman. She cleaned my home for 4 years. I didn't know her last name. I didn't know she'd spent 28 years protecting people like me." He paused. "I didn't know because I never asked." He turned toward the side of the stage. Dolores stood there, simple dress, silver hair, the black notebook tucked under her arm. "Ladies and gentlemen, former Special Agent Dolores Mitchell, the woman who saved my life." Cameras exploded. Reporters shouted. Dolores didn't step to the microphone. She nodded, once. The same nod she'd given 1,000 times when someone said, "Clean this," or "Get on your knees." Same nod, different meaning.
Graham announced the Dolores Mitchell Foundation, scholarships and mentorship for Black women entering federal law enforcement. First-year budget, $12 million. A reporter shouted, "Agent Mitchell, how does it feel to be a hero?" Dolores looked at him, then at the cameras, then at Graham, the man whose name she'd remembered every day, even when he couldn't remember hers. "I was just doing my job, the one I never stopped doing." She turned and walked off stage. No wave, no smile, notebook under her arm, hands steady at her sides. The woman they called the Help didn't need applause. She never had. This is not a story about a billionaire. It never was. This is a story about a woman who was told every single day for 4 years that she was nothing, that her hands were only good for scrubbing, that her skin was something to wipe off, that her voice didn't matter, her eyes didn't see, and her mind didn't think. They called her the Help. They called her the Maid. They called her things that no person should ever be called in a room full of people who say nothing. And she stayed. Not because she had to, not because she needed the money, not because she didn't know her own worth. She stayed because a man was dying, and she was the only one who noticed. That's not a maid. That's not the Help. That's a woman who carried 28 years of service, a lifetime of skill, and a conscience that wouldn't let her walk away, even when walking away was the only thing the world wanted her to do. Dolores Mitchell didn't save Graham Whitfield because he deserved it. She saved him because she could, because she was trained to, because some people don't need a reason to do the right thing. They just need a door that's still open. And Vanessa forgot to change the lock. Some things leave traces. Cruelty does. Poison does. But so does courage. So does integrity. So does a woman who kneels on a marble floor with a cloth in her hand and a badge in her pocket and chooses, quietly, without applause, without recognition, to save a life. I picked this story because it's personal. My grandmother cleaned houses her whole life. Smartest woman I ever knew. Nobody asked what she thought. Nobody cared. Dolores reminded me of her. Talent doesn't care about your uniform. It just waits for the world to shut up and pay attention. Share it with someone who needs to hear it tonight. If this is your first time here, subscribe. Every week, we tell the stories the world tried to forget, about people it tried to ignore, until it couldn't anymore.